Welcome back to Arise Primetime, where we offer perspectives on the news and talking points of the day. I'm Constance Ikoku. Arise analyst Dr. Sam Amadi joins me now for the rest of the show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Constance.
I'm going to start from where I landed with the other guest or a previous guest or analyst, which is about Nigeria at 64. What are your thoughts? It's a big moment, isn't it?
Doesn't look so.
Okay.
Express
it.
Exactly. Well, in terms of 64, is with mortality rate, I mean, 54-old man or woman is old enough. Nigeria has had momentous events, but really, it doesn't look so because I don't think we are celebrating. I mean, no matter how we cut it, I think the last last decade has been one of reversal. Generally, political economists say that Africa, what they call the lost decade, which is no growth from, let's say, 1995 up to now. We had decades of no growth. But for Nigeria, I think that maybe one can argue that in the last, from 2016 or 2015 until now, has been much more of reversals and less of forward movement, whether in terms of economy. We lost our prime position as number one. We're probably number 3 or 4. Hopefully, based on what they are projecting, we could come back to number 3. In terms of security, from 2014, 2012, 2014 primarily, we've drifted into one of the most fragile and terrorized states. So if you look at social cohesion, we are very bad. So I think, yes, we need to celebrate, but again, everybody knows that we are not doing well at all.
Dr. Sam, how do you have hope in a seemingly hopeless situation? I mean, when you talk to a lot of Nigerians, whether it's young people, middle-aged, old people, it's tough. How do you get people to, because when you lose hope, then how do you get it back?
I think we shouldn't lose hope. What we should have is what I call realistic idealism. Basically, that the hope that we have, religious hope that is well.
Yes, it is well.
That's not really the hope here. Ultimately, it is well, but that's not the point. Like they said, in the long term, we're all dead. So
yes,
it will be well, ultimately. But for now, it's not well at all. That's number one. So that realism. But also that we can construct something. I mean, look at the history of whether it's Japan eating something, Korea, China. Countries have gone through devastating moments. But the 3 requirements for reasonable hope is first awareness, leaders who acknowledge that they are falling in bad times, bad paths, and then have the capacity to speak and raise up the enthusiasm of their people. So this might actually be a good time for Nigeria to rebound, but it requires leadership that first admits things are going bad and have the capacity to be much more nationalistic and then try to motivate their citizens to say, let's not fall to pessimism. Let's roll our sleeves and get working. Unfortunately, none of this is available. What we have people who say we're giant of Africa when obviously we are probably not becoming the crippling, everyday a child of Africa.
Right.
And those who speak harshly, who speak more of themselves, terror. I mean, it's amazing that today what we're hearing from political leaders is how to shut down speech, crucify those who are speaking against us, and not how to bring them together and say, let's lift the game and let's look yonder and let's work harder. We can actually get back to being truly number one. Right now, we're not even number one in Africa in any sense.
Yeah. There are certain qualities and elements that are required to build a nation. You mentioned China. When you look at the Chinese story, you would see incredible discipline.
Absolutely.
Not only within the leadership, also within the people.
Yeah.
How are we going to imbibe that? You do need that discipline in order to build.
I mean, discipline is number one. You see, the way Nigerian leaders talk about discipline is the way of thinking about discipline is conformance to their fancy.
Loyalty.
Loyalty to their fancy.
Yes.
So somebody like the Senate President tells the new CJ, how are you going to punish these people who speak against us on social media? That's their own. They say, oh, we want to be like China. But they forget that when Deng came to China, China was in disarray. He did 3 things. First, he says, we're going to pursue wealth. He said, wealth is glorious. So he focused everything on economic growth. He didn't care about personal issues. Secondly, pragmatism. we're looking at facts. It said no true facts. So everything is about facts. About we don't say we're doing well. If our economy is we're not doing well. If our roads are bad, we're not doing well. If Nigerians cannot walk through their neighborhoods, they can move interstate, then we're not doing well. And the third thing, like you already put it, the discipline of self-sacrifice, and it didn't pander to the West. They know that this is where we want to get to, and whatever we need to control ourselves. So I think that what's missing, not just our undisciplined, but it's because leadership is undisciplined. Look at the stories around the prison now. Whatever it tells you, whatever is the facts, it speaks to a total collapse of value. People cannot even trust custodial services. We can't even trust the courts. We can't even so that reckless discipline among leadership translates to discipline among followers, and so. Over time, China was able to head people together to a direction. We need to do that, but to do that, you must have leaders who first recognize their own obligation for self-leadership, meaning discipline themselves, and then focus. And discipline is not punishment. Discipline is about directing people in a cohesive, focused manner to get things done, not to dissipate energy. We are a country that, except we can discipline ourselves, we can't get to development. Development is a serious business. So we talk about development. It can't work. It's not about rhetoric. It's not about just flipping around. You have to be disciplined and focused.
You talk about Deng, and in the same sentence, you talk about self-sacrifice.
Yes.
Do you know that man doesn't have a living, what do you call it? He doesn't have children that lived after him.
Absolutely. They were part of
they
the
died.
purge. They were purged.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So talk about, self-sacrifice, looking at the bigger picture.
Even if you go to Singapore, the same thing. So why do we talk? I remember when J. Jonathan shared books to ministers, look at your book, Obasanjo did the same thing. But they talk about this as glib talk. These guys, today, nobody says this is a property that belongs to. And we have it in Nigeria. Look at Emma Iwara in the Eastern Nigeria economy, the fastest growing in the world then. This guy finished, went on exile, came back from Ireland. Friends have to build a house for him in Umuahia. We had a story about Murtala Mohammed. So the point is that we actually have leaders in this country who could be that sacrificial, who have seen their life in the higher nobility of helping their country become great. They are obsessed by the country's greatness, not by acquiring wealth. So we're going nowhere with this crop of leaders who, not just that they're wealthy, they want to collapse their country to be extraordinarily wealthy. So discipline is not about carrying cane or shutting down social media or no contrary view. That's not discipline. Discipline is that sense of right-sizing yourself to fit into the straitjacket of leadership that requires you to sacrifice and ensure that at all what you want is the outcome. So yes, Lee Kuan Yew, without Deng, these guys have no property. And by the way, I remember when a Chinese leader emerged and I was in the US, they were talking about who is this guy. They don't travel. They focus. Development requires you to sit down and think and read all the files and meet the people and talk to them. How many times has a Nigerian president really walk to the neighborhood, talk to groups, meet youths, meet women, have conversation with business people, small, medium enterprises? How do you feel the pulse? How do you generate the ideas? How do you second-guess your theories, whether it works? If you're not even spending almost 1/3 of your time or 2/3, you spend flying, attending very useless, sometimes less meaningless convention. So discipline is missing, and that's really the problem here.
So when you talk about meeting the people, being aware of what is going around you, most of the leaders today, they are walled off from the people, in houses that have high walls and heavy security.
Absolutely.
That in itself indicates that you haven't provided for the people. That's why you have to hide yourself
Absolutely.
from the people. Just suppose your Asobila to the White House, for instance.
Exactly.
But I also want to look at traditional African systems where your chief or your head is just down the road. Why are we not borrowing and looking back? Because I think Africans forgot who they were. A lot of the things that were required to move ahead are within us. Yeah. Why have we not stepped back to pick from that? Because you keep borrowing, you can borrow, but you have to pick from within because you need to understand who you are.
I think that's a historical explanation. Look, when we had colonial rule, you created this legitimacy. If you look at many of our cities, you have the GRA, government reserve areas. So they created this idea of disconnection between the ruler and the people. Whether it's colonial chiefs, warrant chiefs, or even to today's emirs and kings. So what we have today is a new feudalism that disconnects the people from those are rulers. So you're absolutely correct. So look at the villa. For example, you've been in the White House, gone there. It's even see-through. Now, even the architecture of the villa is totally redundant and anachronistic, because you can't even see your president with all the security work around. But in the US, you can just stay far away and see your president go to work. That shows that this is the people's work they are doing. So I think that the African crisis is that we inherited these institutions and reified them instead of transforming them.
Yes.
And instead of changing them and getting back to a much more communal, collective leadership, we now restated ourselves as a new colonial master. And that's the crisis of development we are facing. So I think that if you look at the notion of leadership we have imbibed, economic to development, and you made a point, executive intelligence you need, the kind of attunement to the people. You see, you don't just know the people's problem just by going to Congress or hunger. You have to deal with the people, and then you inspire them to solve the problem themselves. Because you see, leadership is not just about government fixing things. It's about government transforming people, helping them with ideas and value, so that they too can follow what government wants to do. So until you have leaders who have foot in their boots on the ground, meaning they are talking to their people, they listen to them, and they're able to react to the issues, we're not going to have that kind of transformation that we had in Asia. And that's why I think that instead of going to West, I say, young man, go East.
Yes.
Go to Asia. Go and see where a different kind of model of leadership, where leadership is not just the Western neoliberal abstract notion that leaders exist to the people.
Right.
Yeah.
Your final words on this.
I think we've failed as a country. I think we're not precluded. There's no fatalism. Nigeria can still be great, but Nigeria isn't going to be great on its terms. We can't be great laughing, hitting ourselves at the back, messing up, and speaking big grammar and say a great nation. We're going to be great in the same way other countries have been great. First, acknowledge that we have failed, we are failing state, and then decide to do things differently. And that starts with leaders first knowing that they want to develop their country and not to themselves, and willing to change this very, neo-feudal, undemocratic, prerogative-based leadership and create common ownership of governance.
Dr. Sam Amadi, thank you so much for coming onto the program.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's it for this edition of Arise Primetime. Do join us again next week from me and the entire team here in Abuja. It's goodbye and thank you for watching.